without a doubt, the greatest of all villains. He represents pure evil. He is the ultimate deceiver. He is darkness incarnate. He is Satan. Or Satan. Rezon, son of Eliada. Rezon was Israel's adversary as long as Solomon lived. Another use of this term can be found in Psalm 109. The writer there is furious with people who have slandered him, and he is wanting someone to prosecute this misdeed. And he says, "Appoint someone evil to oppose my enemy. Let an accuser stand at his right hand." So whether a Satan refers to an adversary, a troublemaker, or a prosecutor, it all refers, in the lowercase, to a person on earth serving as an agent of obstruction or punishment. Now the first appearance of a non-human Satan occurs in the book of Numbers in the story of Balaam and the donkey. If you haven't read it, you really need to. It is bizarre. But the gist of it is that Balaam was a prophet who angers God by taking a trip on a donkey against God's will. So God sends Malach Yahweh, an angel of the Lord, who is armed with a sword. Now, Balaam doesn't notice this angel, but his donkey does, and he goes off the path and into a field. Balaam beats the donkey when he does this, and soon the angel appears, and the donkey changes course again. On the third time, there's nowhere for the donkey to go, so he simply lays down, and Balaam starts laying another beating to him. At this point, if a smart donkey and a sword-wielding angel weren't hard enough to believe, the donkey starts talking.
Accidentally what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
So, yeah. The donkey and Balaam have a conversation about their past together, and Balaam comes to realize the donkey was always a good servant. The Lord opens up Balaam's eyes, and he sees the angel. The angel of the Lord asked him,
"Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you, because your path is a reckless one before me."
So as we leave First Temple, we see that a Satan can be an everyday obstacle, a troublemaker, or an accuser. But we also see the start of a transition to it being a title of one appointed by God. With the arrival of the Second Temple period, the juiciest role of Satan in the Old Testament comes in the book of Job. This is the horrible story of Job's faith being tested beyond human endurance. The story shifts between heaven and earth, but starts with a meeting of a celestial council led by God. An entity known as Ha-Satan, which means the Satan, appears. Modern translations simply say Satan with a capital S, and that's what I'll use here, but the original translation is the Satan, or even the accuser. Check your Bibles, most have footnotes reflecting this. When the God of the Bible was making his first appearance, the situation was unique because this religion revolved around one God. Nearly all dominant religions at and before that time were polytheistic and had a council of gods or a cast of divine characters. But this new religion of Yahweh was not a total clean break from tradition. It was still highly influenced by polytheism, as its early writings show. A more detailed example is in Exodus with the famous story of Moses and the 10 plagues on Egypt. The final plague was the most vicious. God kills all of the firstborn children in Egypt whose house does not bear the lamb's blood on the doors. God does this by sending the destroyer, known in Hebrew as Masit. Here, Masit passes over these houses, hence the Jewish celebration of Passover. The important thing to note here is that God directly controls this assassin. In the previous entry in this series, God punished David for conducting a census. God did not personally wreak the havoc, but instead it was an entity referred to as pestilence, an angel, Malach, and 3, the angel who is bringing destruction, Malach Hamasit. Hamasit. Masit. So what we see here can be explained as a result of monotheism. When there's only one God who controls everything, does he also have to be responsible for the bad things that happen? We will slowly see these negative aspects of Yahweh be extracted and become separate entities. Knowing just a little bit about biblical history will help to better understand things. The Bible writings for these purposes can be broken into 3 periods. 586 BCE. Second Temple. This was from 530 to 200 BCE. The intertestamental, between the Old and New Testaments, and the New Testament. During the First Temple, we have Moset, the smiting angel, and a new word, Satan, which in Hebrew means an agent of obstruction or punishment. Though Semitic languages do not have capital letters, to us, this is a lowercase word. This is not the uppercase Satan that mankind will eventually come to identify with. That uppercase Satan is absent from the Old Testament. But during First Temple, the word Satan occurs a few times, both to mean an earthly adversary and a celestial one. As for the earthly references, there are only 5, and 4 of those occur in biblical passages associated with David or his son Solomon. For example, in 1 Samuel, David became a double agent in the Philistine army, and they eventually became suspicious of him. They said, "He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us," become a Satan during the fighting. And when David's son Solomon became king, and God raised up against Solomon another adversary, or Satan, Rezon, son of Eliada. Rezon was Israel's adversary as long as Solomon lived.
Why don't you throw yourself down there? For isn't it written, he will give his angels charge over you, and in their hands they will lift you up, lest you strike your foot against the stone.
When there's only one God who controls everything, does he also have to be responsible for the bad things that happen?